me just close my door for a minute. It's so loud out here. Okay. All right, can we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Just want to start off. I just want to give a quick update. I had put it on the agenda that when we were debating the budget on Monday evening, late into the night, early into the morning, we received word the next day that the state, the House of Representatives passed the state budget, and included in that was an additional 1.2 million, approximately a couple bucks more than that, in pilot money due to the increased assessed value of our two universities, Sacred Heart and Fairfield University, which is a really good thing. So that, obviously is a helpful thing we can add to our revenues. I had Jared and the finance department do some work yesterday, crunching the numbers, because the Senate passed the budget last night, but we were confident that it was going to stay the same, but obviously we didn't know until after that happened. But Jared went and did some in the finance department, going through it. So we're receiving an additional 1.207013 in pilot money. Education cost sharing increase from 22 to 23 is $2,610. Town road aid is up $979, and our low SIP funds went up $461. So I just wanted to give that update to the Board of Selectmen. Obviously, it's, this is one of the things that I shared with the Charter Revision Commission, that I thought our budget process should start later, because these are the kinds of things that happen that really can make a difference in decision making that happens for us on the town side. So obviously I've made a recommendation to the I sent a letter to the Board of Finance, all of them, and asked them to take this into consideration, in reducing the revenue, increasing the revenue so that they can reduce the mill rate. Because as we know, they actually increased the tax rate on the budget that we actually passed, higher than what we passed. So I just wanted to share that information with both of you. I know that we're not voting on anything. That part of our board is done, but I just wanted to give that update.
That's great, Brendan. You've shared that information with the Board of Finance, like you said, so that they're aware and can take that into consideration when they set the mill rate.
Correct.
Yeah, perfect.
All right, so we'll get to the next item. Item number 4, can I get a motion to hear and consider and adopt a bond resolution appropriating $22,701,443 for the costs associated with phase 1 of the air conditioning upgrade project of various schools. Those schools include North Strathfield, Osborne Hill, and Fairfield Woods. And this would be authorizing the grants. This would also authorize the grants for $1,116,320 for such appropriation, and authorizing the issuance of bonds to finance such appropriation. It's a 20-year bond, and it does require Board of Finance and RTM approval. As you know, we were the items we couldn't get through on Monday. We were trying to get this done in an effort to get them to the Board of Finance on Thursday evening, when they are going to be setting the mill rate, but then would have time to take up the capital items, so we could get under the wire for bonding. And so I present that. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, so we have Angelus on the, oh, Christine Vitale, I see her name there now. I don't know if it's Christine or if it's Angelus who wants to present the item.
Hi, Angeles. I'm going to ask you to present. I apologize for getting on late, driving back from the State Board of Ed meeting. So I had a dual meetings. So I don't have
Gotcha.
everything in front of me. I'm in the car.
Sure, that's fine. You're up, Angelus.
Oh, great. I'm sorry. I had a pop-up on my screen saying, please mute. So I'm trying to figure out what that is.
You're good.
All right. So, yeah, so as you mentioned, this is this would be the phase one of adding air conditioning to the three mentioned schools. I know the 22 million is a large number to look at. One thing I'd like to point out to you in the backup is the district-wide air conditioning upgrade project phase 1 through 5 cash flow. And you'll see at the bottom there that even though we are asking for the full amount, which is the 22,701,443, what we are looking to get bonded at this time would be the 1.153,825, so the 1 million. That is so kind of, as you're mentioned, the word you're used to is seed money to get these projects moving along, to get them designed and ready to go out to bid.
So Angelus, let me, forgive me for interrupting, but you just confused me. Are you yeah, no, not a problem. Are you asking us to approve 22 million today, or are you asking us to approve $1 million?
We are asking you to approve the 22,701,443. And the reason for that being is that even though in initial conversations with the state, they're telling us that this would not be an Oscar reimbursable project as a standalone, we're following the process of as if it is, so that because we're going to continue to work with the state. Ms. Kupchak was very nice enough to reach out to the state to try to get further guidance from them. But as you know, with our construction projects, we do ask for the entire amount up front because it is an Oscar requirement to show that the funding was approved before they'll accept it as a project.
Okay, so if I understand that correctly, just so that I'm aware, you reached out to the state and said, is this project reimbursable? The state came back and said, no, we do not believe it is. The first select woman stepped in and said to the state, can you potentially help us here consider this? And they said, you know what, we'll consider this. And so what you're doing is following all the guidance from the state as if we have an opportunity to get reimbursed. Is that correct?
Correct. And just to go a little bit further, when we did receive the initial guidance from the state that it was not, we reached back out to the state and asked as to what they were referencing and why they were calling it that it was not. And we were never given a clear answer on that. So that's why we asked Ms. Kupchak to reach out to the states to follow up on the guidance as to why is it not? Why are they calling it not? What legislation are they using to say that this is not a reimbursable project?
Brenda, do you care to shed a little bit of light on that just so that we all know as we move forward? And I'm sorry for waylaying the conversation. I'll shut up. You just confused me with this. So I just want to get this.
I apologize. I no intention of confusing anyone.
I understand that. I totally. Brenda, what was your conversation with the state, if you don't mind?
There was no conversation. I forwarded the email from Sal Morbido, who said that he was told that that the outcomes of discussions regarding air conditioning work on projects that were not new renovations and such, unless we did get an answer back. Jared, you have your hand up? Oh, okay. So I forwarded it to ask them for clarification because they're saying that they wouldn't reimburse for air conditioning projects that weren't part of a total renovation or a larger scope renovation. So we're trying to get some clarification because according to our school district, that hasn't been the case in the past. And I know that the legislature has talked about funding AC projects
Right.
with
Yeah,
some
I
of the
remember
ARPA
that.
money for indoor air quality stuff, for due to COVID and things like that. So we're still awaiting that information, but I get what I think Angelus is saying as he's following the protocols, as if we could potentially be, so we would be in line with those protocols.
Fair enough. Thank you for the clarification to both of you. Go ahead, Angelus. My apologies again.
So, actually, and that was kind of a wrap up. I was going to go for any questions, but that's really potentially what we're looking at, is to start that phase one of this project of air conditioning the district. As you know, during COVID and even before COVID, adding air conditioning to the buildings has always been a priority. It became more of a priority now. Being that we live in New England, our weather outside, we have hot, humid days causing potential for mold in the buildings. We get humidity in the building. So I think people see it as an air conditioning and go, oh, it's a comfort thing, but it's more than a comfort thing. And I think that's the important thing to stress, is it's not just a comfort thing. We have indoor air quality, and that causes problems that the air conditioning would help. And also in this proposal for these buildings, not only is it adding air conditioning, but we are also looking at the DOAS systems as well to improve upon the DOAS systems as we move through with the air conditioning. So it would become a full package. And also a good thing to note on this total project is that these numbers are not just numbers that we came up with. We had an engineering firm come out and do a assessment of all of the buildings. And I would say that what we have is better numbers than if we had just looked at buildings. And we've had more inclusive numbers because we've looked at the electrical going into the building, the DOAS systems in the building, the sprinkler systems in the building, what modifications would be needing. We also anticipate in some of the buildings where we will have to drop ceilings down to the ground to make room for ductwork and stuff. What improvements can we do as we put those systems back into place? For instance, if we're dropping old T8 light bulb fixtures down, can we put LED systems back up to save money as we move through the project? So I just want to make it clear that this is an all-inclusive. It's not just let's add air conditioning to the buildings. So with that, I don't know if Ms. Vitale has something.
Thank you, Angelus. Maybe if I just open it up to the board for questions, that'll be helpful.
Yeah, Mrs. Vitale, did you have something that you wanted to say?
You're on mute, Christine.
Nice poem. We
Hold on,
can't
I
hear
think
you. Yeah.
Hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know what happened. I'm sorry. You kind of caught me in transit here. From what Angela said, the full amount, we ran into this with Sherman, that at first the state told us no, they wouldn't reimburse us for the air conditioning. There was more discussion at the state level. Ms. Kupchik, when she was a state rep, got involved, and then they ended up reimbursing. So we really want to be ready to go if the landscape at the state changes. As Mr. Papa George and Ms. Kupchik reported, there's been a lot of conversations about air quality at the state level, possibly opening up some funding. And we just want to be ready to go, show that we're committed to moving this full project forward, and wouldn't want the lack of commitment in the approval process to stand in the way. In terms of the building itself, we've spoken before about all of our other air conditioning projects. We're also concerned about the health of the structure. We appreciate that our buildings are town assets, and moisture is not kind to walls at times. And we want to just make sure that we are creating the most healthy environment for the people in the building as well as the buildings themselves. And that's my spiel for now, but happy to take any questions on the project.
Thank you, Christine. So I'll open it up to the board.
I don't have any additional questions.
Thanks. So let's start with, I'm going to start with Mr. Sastrom just to get this out of the way. Can you confirm that the bond language is consistent with what we've done in the past and that you reviewed these bonds, and I presume they're 20-year bonds, as I recall, correct?
They are. The language is consistent. I think, as I said at the end of the last meeting, the only difference is we have an appropriation here that is more than the amount requested to be bonded, because the town already knows that it is going to get the grant for 1,116,320. So you've got a clause in there that authorizes the first select woman to apply for and get the grant, which would reduce the appropriation amount, and therefore, which would be included in the appropriation amount. Therefore, we reduce the amount to be bonded.
Right. Mrs. Vitale, the Board of Education, step me through very quickly what the approval process has been like for this moving forward with the Board of Education, just so that it's on the record. Tell us what happened there and how that went through, if you don't mind.
Yep, the board had these we've been through a couple of reiterations of our waterfall. They were put on the waterfall in a kind of a 10-year timeline. The board, when we voted for our capital projects and non-recurring capital projects back in the fall, wanted the projects fast-tracked, concerned about COVID, building, some legislation actually happening at the discussions at the state level, where if the temperatures in the building get to a certain amount, schools would need to close. And also just from the savings. So we shortened the timeline on these air conditioning projects, grouped them in phases, focusing on equity at the middle schools. This would move all 3 of our middle schools fully air conditioned. We had these discussions as part of the ARPA discussions, you may recall, for Woods. And North Strathfield and Osborne Hill are 2 504 schools that are not fully conditioned. So by moving this forward, it would bring equity between all of our 504s. Typically, air conditioning has been brought to the elementary schools through the renovation project. So Dwight and Jennings are still on the waterfall for a renovation. So as part of that renovation, if it is approved, later down the line, air conditioning would be worked into the renovation. So the board has approved the full amount of phase 1 when we approved all of our other capital projects.
So the will a potential redistricting have any impact on these 3 schools, other than, I know there could be different children going there, that's not what I mean, but the utilization of these schools and all that? Just give me your color on that. I think I know the answer, but I just want it on the record.
Absolutely, I appreciate the question. It would not, it would just potentially mean more children in schools that are fully air conditioned if we redistrict. These schools are not on the list of potential schools that might be shuttered.
Okay. Mr. Papa George, thank you, Mrs. Vitale, and I'll come back to you in a second. Mr. Papa George, you had indicated that you went out and got engineering studies done. I don't know, engineering studies might be too strong a word. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that basically these numbers that you're coming up with aren't a swag. There's something behind them that was done by outside experts. Is that fair to say?
It is. Through the Board of Ed operating budget, we did hire DTC. I would comfortably call these numbers schematic budget numbers that were done by their experts. They went out, they toured every building, they looked at blueprints, they pulled schematics, they pulled current mechanicals in the buildings and provided a schematic, estimated schematic drawings and pictures for what we believe will be the cost. Can I just correct one thing though? Ms. Vitale, you mentioned this would equalize the 3 middle schools, but Tomlinson is phase 2 of the air conditioning. There is a small section at Tomlinson that is not currently air conditioned. I just want to make that clear.
Thank you, Mr. Papa George. I had that 90% that for Tomlinson, not 100%, but much more equal right now. I appreciate it for that correction.
Angeles, what's the total cost of, Mrs. Vitale continues to speak of phases, and I think when she does that, again, Christine, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I think you're talking about the phases of addressing the air conditioning plan across the district. What's the total cost of that plan?
As it sits right now, if we follow the current path, we're looking at approximately $76,529,465. based on the layout that we provided with the phases, and that it takes into account escalations over the years for different projects.
Okay. And of course, it'd be contingency on that and things like that that gets added on, right?
Exactly. There's also, obviously, as we said, the potential for some reimbursement there. So if we use the reimbursement rate that we are typical of seeing from the state, it puts our estimated cost for this project at 58,551,316. But again, that's not guaranteed money at this point. We're still in talks with the state. There's
Yeah.
also been talk about other potential money, as Ms. Vitale and Ms. Kupchak mentioned, for potential for projects. And I believe that we are in a very good shape, probably better than a lot of other districts who may be applying for other money available because of the forethinking and of the board and the DTC schematics that we have already in place and ready to move on.
So I just want to jump in though, as part of the capital working group, for both, you, Tom, and Nancy. We, this is an appropriation for these 3 schools. No, nothing has been determined what's going on capital, for the remaining 4-year plan. That work will be done in the early fall when the planning group comes back together. And I think, as I think I may have mentioned to you all when we talked about the other projects, Monday, that I think there's going to be some real spirited discussions happening because, that's when I think the proverbial rubber meets the road, where we have a lot of things coming up in capital needs, right? So we have wastewater treatment, we have, a whole host of different things, and the school district has a lot of needs as well. So we are going to have discussions about prioritizing and what's going to be what's going to be working within our model of how much we're going to allow to go on the town's credit card in any given year. So that section isn't part of this. This is, the seed money for the appropriation that's listed on the agenda that would bring these 3 schools up to full air conditioning. And then the discussions on those other pieces have yet to be had. So I just wanted to be clear there, and be forthright about where the discussions are.
Yeah. Thank you, Brendan. Said another way, an approval of this, or even the recommendation or the thoughts of the body that you put together, or this, is not a commitment to the entire plan, the entire phased out plan, correct?
Correct.
So, and thank you, because it's kind of where I was going. What I wanted to know was knowing what the spending cap is, and knowing, I mean, look, this is a bonding cap. This isn't just us being, hey, we've got to save money for the taxpayer, whatever. There is only so much that we can bond at any given time. What I want to ask Mr. Papa George, you're in the seat of representing the administration right now, because I don't see anybody else that's actually the administration on. And Mrs. Vitale, you obviously represent the board. My question to you two is the school district, number one, do they understand, first of all, what Mrs. Kupchak said, that this is not a complete commitment to fund this going forward? And B, do they understand that you guys are going to have to prioritize other projects out to fund this moving forward? In other words, if you do go forward, if you decide that the priorities are air conditioning these schools over a period of years, other projects are going to need to be pushed out. Is that context been provided to the Board of Ed?
It has. It has been provided to the Board of Ed. I am a representative on the capital planning workshop that, for instance, that's why we're looking at the cash flow. We appreciate there's only so much cash available to the Board of Ed each year. So while we're looking at this first phase, a commitment from the town to move this forward, is aware that this is going to impact the projects put forward in the short term.
Okay. And Mr. Angelos, thank you, Mr. Vitale. Mr. Papa George, representing and being responsible for the infrastructure of the schools and the buildings. Are you comfortable with this, given the fact that this, first of all, 22 million is much higher than kind of an annual allotment, right? I think the numbers I've heard thrown around is the entire town has, low 30s in terms of million, and that's got to be split between the school district and the town, so that you're using up virtually your entire allotment and then some
Well, to
on
be
this.
clear, Tom, the 22 million would not be bonded this year, and Jared can speak to this
Yeah,
with
it'll
more
go over a
insight.
number of years. I
Right,
get it.
correct. So, right now we're looking at approximately $1 million and change for the seed money to spec out these 3 schools. No, that's not going to be all bonded this year.
I understand that, but what I'm trying to get along to is we only have so much that we can commit to. What I'm asking Mr. Papa George is, are you comfortable as being responsible for the facilities in town that by prioritizing this air conditioning project, which I'm not questioning the fact that the air conditioning, the air quality and the things, I understand why, but are you comfortable that you guys can manage within this and manage within our means by prioritizing these and not have major issues, other issues with these buildings to your knowledge? I know it's not a guarantee.
Um, I was just going to start by saying that there's no guarantee with that, with what comes up in emergencies and stuff. But I and my department, we're comfortable. We've been working with the capital working group. We kind of were given a target number of the 12.5, and we're pulling our waterfall, and we're working on what can be moved out, what can be moved in. We're playing. I don't want to say playing the game, but we're moving and shuffling things around. We're looking at what might possibly be able to be pulled into an operating project as opposed to the actual capital waterfall project. So we are comfortable that we will be able to hit target numbers as we move forwards.
And I
Okay.
just back up on that. The Board of Ed also, Tom, I'm not sure if you're aware, we have a facility subcommittee now.
Yeah.
There, and we're going to be working with Mr. Papa George's department just to, before the waterfall goes before the Board of Ed and other town bodies, making sure that we have a handle on cash flow and how that's going to impact bonding each year.
So you guys are all on the same page, and we're not going to get some big surprise here where, hey, we're bonding this, but all of a sudden, and Mr. Papa George, I know big surprise. If there's a catastrophic failure at a school, like I get it, but we're not going to come back and say, oh, and then we've got to do this in any one given year. To your knowledge, you're trying to manage within the means.
Absolutely. We're trying to manage within the means. To my current knowledge of the buildings and the facilities, we don't currently foresee something that we're going to have to come back to you and say, we have to do this tomorrow.
My other question is, you made a comment that, oh, we're trying to push some things to the operating budget. I'm just curious how you're going to do that.
We've identified some things that were smaller or could be broken out into operating phases of over a couple years as opposed to a single larger project. So we're looking at every possible scenario to look at the best way to be fiscally responsible for the town.
Mm-hmm. So you think you're going to have room in your operating budget? You're going to ask for an increase in your operating budget to cover some of these that would have otherwise been capitalized?
No, I wouldn't say an increase in operating budget. I would say, because we've always carried some projects, smaller projects in the operating budget. So
True.
these might be these, and again, some of the smaller
So I
waterfall
think what he's trying
projects.
to say is, right, so the item that we're talking about right now is the air conditioning that's on the agenda. All this other capital stuff will be discussed. And they're working, they put together their facilities committee again. Due to the work that we're doing, it was a recommendation that they start working on that end. So that's obviously work that's in progress. And then again, we'll come back in the fall. And as we put together the 4-year plan, that's how things will roll out and come before us. But I would like us to kind of focus on the agenda item.
Well, I am, because I've been around long enough and I've seen this long enough with the Board of Ed side, and this isn't a criticism. I know what happens here. The big thing that happens on the Board of Ed side is everybody talks about parity. right? Everybody talks about consistency across the district. So while it's absolutely correct that we're, at being asked to approve this 22 million, I know what's going to happen when this comes back into for whatever period. There's going to be all this discussion about parity. And what I want to make sure is that the Board of Ed and the Education Administration understands now is that there's only so much we can put on the credit card. And if that were to happen, if they're going to come back and make that parity argument, they need to understand that there's only so much available for them to spend, and other projects are going to be pushed out. And that's not me trying to be hard. That's not me saying I don't support the air conditioning. That's the financial fact of what our capacity is to bond these things. And I want to make sure they know that going in so that there's not an oopsie in 2 years. That's what I'm
Well,
trying to get to.
yeah, that's what the capital workshop is all about, Tom. So we're
I
all,
understand, but I want to know, but by the time that happens, Brenda, we're already going to have approved
right. So just to be
the
clear, though,
22.
just to be clear, that this is for the items on Monday, and this item are the bondable items, right? So we're coming back, like I explained to the Board of Selectmen, and I explained quite a few times in other public meetings. We're going to put together the remaining 4 years of the 5-year capital plan. Those decisions will be made based on the formula that I set forth with the cap. Again, even that, so that process is capping each of the years based on flows and all this stuff. And then each year, the administration will come forward with the list of items. And in that capital plan is going to have contingency and all of this stuff. But they're going to come forward. The administration will put items on the agenda for the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and so on. That's when the discussions can happen, because we're not going to put together a 5-year plan that busts through our bonding caps. We're not going to do that. And I've made that very, very clear to the working group. We will not be doing that. And
I
that
want to
is
make sure
why-
it's clear. I want to make sure it's clear to the Board of Ed.
No, they're involved in the meetings. The chairwoman and vice chairman and Angelus and their financial, Ms. Laborious, are involved in those meetings, as well as our entire finance department, and 2 members of the Board of Finance, 2 members of the RTM. So we are, that is our guiding principle, the bonding cap, and that is how we are operating and sliding in these projects. So we're very cognizant. It's just all as I wanted to say.
And you agree, Mrs. Vitale?
I do agree, and we already just, for the next 3 years for this project, looked at the cash flow, looked at the other things that are currently on the waterfall, and we feel comfortable moving this forward. There is a cap, and the Board of Ed fast-tracked these air conditioning projects in part to get them done sooner, but also by shortening the timeline. The estimated savings is about $25 million. But, we appreciate that roofs need to be fixed, boilers need to be replaced, and we need to prioritize those projects as well. So I think that we're all on the same page on this, and I think as the capital group continues to meet, it'll even become clearer. But yes, to answer your question, we are aware.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you. Mr. Schmidt, what's the impact on annual expense approximate by going up to, first of all, what do we think the annual impact on this is on the budget?
Do you want to know about this particular project, or you want to talk about the agenda as we started with on Monday?
Both, please, if you have it, if it's easy.
So I would say the items that were on the agenda on Monday, including this one, and for what we, and I'm going to put a lot of caveats on this, what we anticipate to bond during this next bond issuance will probably be about $17 million worth of items that will get bonded. That's removing the one WPCA project that was hadn't been voted on by the commission yet. So it's about $17 million in total bonding. Again, that's over the next 12 to 15 months. There will, as was stated, there's this money that's going to be on there for the Board of Ed HVAC is going to be a small amount in this first year that will get bonded, and then the remaining amount, my understanding, will be spread out over a 2-year period as far as the cash needs go. So I'm just focused on what's going to happen over the next year. So $17 million. If it's that amount, that's one caveat, because we still have to go through all the other departments and make sure that they are slated and on track to be able to spend this money. Depending on what the interest rate is, they have gone up, as I think everybody knows. And then, the other factor is, what are we doing with bands? Are there going to be bond anticipation notes in this issuance? Typically there are. So the total, but let's say there aren't. If I take $17 million and we bond it over 20 years, the annual payment is about $1.2 million. Assuming, and that's assuming a 3.5% interest rate.
And that 1.7 million, that includes just $1 million.
1.2.
1.2. That includes just $1 million and change of this, not the remaining, correct?
That's right.
So then on top of that, you've got another 19 for this, and I'm just talking on an annual basis. So that means that you're going to have another $800,000 or so related to this using cocktail napkin math with the same type of assumptions over the 20-year period that's outstanding.
I think that's a reasonable estimate. Yep.
Right. So that means that by doing this, by doing the 17 and doing 19 on this, we're probably adding over the next 22 years or whatever, about $2 million to the budget on capital spending, on our debt service costs. Now, mind you, stuff will be dropping off, right?
Right. We'll be retiring bonds along the way. Correct.
Do you know what the net might be? How much are we retiring on bonds typically? We're paying how much per year?
I don't know that, and it varies per year, and it can vary fairly significantly.
Right.
And
but it's millions.
Typically it's millions. It's millions for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, Mr. Papa George, how comfortable are you with this 22 million that we're not going to get a significant surprise with the estimates that come back? Do you have any sense based on, supply chain and all that kind of stuff? Are you okay?
We had a conversation with DTC, who is the engineering firm that gave us the schematic budgets, and we also met with another company, Colliers, and because of the supply chains and the issues, so we're starting to see supply chain come back into line. So we feel that by the time we're ready to actually start purchasing equipment, that we should be back in line with what these numbers are. If we were to go out tomorrow and order equipment, we would probably be low, but we feel that by the time next year comes and we're ready to actually start buying equipment, we should be better in line.
Would you bring up a good question is when do you anticipate the work at the 3 schools would be done?
So phase 1 is broken out over 3 years is what we anticipate. Obviously the first step of that is to get get an engineer on board and start doing the actual designs and schematics so that we can go out to bid. So we don't anticipate any work actually boots on the ground starting until summer of 23.
And would that be at each location, or would that be one location and then, how's that break out? Do you know?
We haven't broken that out yet because our thought was there's multiple ways to do it. If we can award to one bidding company and see a value engineering savings because they are doing 3 sites, or if we could do it over 3 different bids and get 3 different companies on board. But our anticipation would be to have work begin on all 3 sites next summer.
Okay, and last question I'll have for you on this is at these 3 schools and looking at them, is there work that we recently completed and are paying for at these schools that is going to be damaged or need to be redone because we're doing this?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Woods, we did the roof, so the roof is in good shape for new equipment to arrive. Osborne, we haven't done any work. Oh, actually, we did the roof there, so that should be good for new equipment. And North Stratfield, the roof is in good shape, so we're not anticipating any issues with any previous work that has been done at these buildings.
Is that, and how long are these units expected to last? I mean, we're bonding this over 20 years. Is these 20-year lifetimes for these items?
With routine maintenance, absolutely. We could expect a 20-year out of these newer equipment.
Right. I assume, though, that part of this is going to be by doing this, we're going to have increased operating costs per year for both maintenance as well as for electricity on these items.
I would anticipate that, yes.
Have you guys factored that in, or do you know what that's going to be yet?
We have not. We'll have better information once we get the engineers on board and do this first part of planning, because we'll be able to tell what type of units we need to use and what their economy is on them. So once we get into this first phase, we'll be able to do better numbers for budgeting for utilities.
You don't have a ballpark?
Unfortunately, I do not have something in front of me that I could probably pull something up, but I don't have anything in front of me today for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks, Ms. Vitale. I know you had to rush back.
It's okay.
Is there any additional questions from the board?
Nope.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor of this item?
Aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
I wish I could ask you for an update on what happened today, Christine.
We need to update our plan and report back.
Yeah, God. All right. Okay.
In September, 3 months. So it's going to be,
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But-
All right. Well, we can talk offline. Thank you.
Yep.
Item number 5. Can I get a motion to consider and act upon the tax refunds as recommended by the tax collector in the amount of $20,539.76?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion on this item? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Can I get a motion to go into executive session to discuss the resolution of blighted properties on 447 Stratfield Road and 335 Kings Highway with the town attorney?
So moved.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so Mr. Kelly, do your magic. Bye, guys. Thank
Bye.
you. Take care now.
Take care. Thank you.
Can I get a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Tom,
Seconded.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Can I get a motion to resolve the blight liens for 447 Stratfield Road and 335 Kings Highway in accordance with the advice of the town attorney?
So
Yes.
moved.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously.
And Madam First Selectman, no votes were taken during.
No
the
votes were
executive
taken in executive session, correct. Sorry about that. All right, everyone, motion to adjourn,
So moved.
I'll second it. Thank you.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks a lot for making time to be available today, everyone.
Okay. Thank
No
you.
problem. Thank you,
Take
everybody.
care. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.